Good morning. This is Kevin Robbins, CEO for MEA, and we're glad you could join us for our weekly webinar, moving from the COVID crisis to recovery and growth. So glad you can join us. To remind everybody, this is available for both MEA members and non-members. Part of our responsibility in the region is to help businesses in general kind of look at what they need to succeed. So we're pleased to invite both members and non-members to join us today. Okay, next page. Just to remind everybody, this is a weekly webinar we do at 11 a.m. every Tuesday. Next week, how to make Zoom 3D. I'm spending most of my day looking at flat people. So really, when we look forward, managing virtual teams is how we're going to bring that to life. How do we create the relationships, the bonding rapport with the people we manage? And so we hope you can join us for that. And then the following week, we'll be addressing unconscious bias in hiring, which again is very topical, and I'm sure you'll gain a lot of those sessions. And as always, when we do the webinars, we start with a topic that is part of the new normal, kind of looking at things we have done or need to do, and kind of envisioning what we need to think about or do differently going forward. At the end of each session, for the last 20, 30 minutes, Amy McAndrew, MEA's in-house attorney, will address all the kind of current issues or new issues brought on by changes, which, as we have now all become accustomed to, every week or so, there's something new that we have to readjust to. So the new normal includes lots of change. So kind of each session does both of those. So I hope you can continue to join us. We'll send out the information from today, and we'll include a link to register for those future events. We're very excited also to announce that we're back doing in-person training beginning August 5th. You see that backdrop there is, we at MEA, we have a great space, so we're able to space everybody out when we do training. You can see we have lots and lots of sanitizer, masks required, and all the, very safe environment. But, there is an advantage to live training for many people, so we're excited to offer it. You'll see the classes that we're including: Team Lead, Foundational Series, Stress Management, Diversity, and Civility. So again, you can go to our website for further information or to register for those courses. Next. And we are holding our third Pandemic Safety Officer training on July 27th. This one, like the others, is getting close to filling out. So if you are the PSO for your company, and again, in Pennsylvania, you're required to have a health and safety plan and a PSO, we encourage you to join us. We will also be starting pretty soon, reopening up our health and safety roundtable with a little broader scope to cover PSO responsibilities. So if you are a member, you'll be receiving something about that going forward. That'll be I believe we're going to do that on a monthly basis to, again, help everybody with the issues that are kind of new issues or old with a slight twist to them coming out of COVID-19. Okay, so as I mentioned, we will email the presentation along with the recording. If you do have questions throughout today's presentations, please put them into Q&A or chat, and to the extent we have time, we'll try to get to every one of those. And as always, for MEA members, if you have questions coming out of today, feel free to email or call us for both our hotline as well as our free MEA legal support. Okay, so next slide. So we've been talking in the last couple of weeks about the new normal and what we need to consider and how things are changing. Obviously, one of the big areas is compensation. What about our structures have we had to change during the crisis, and what do we need to be thinking about going forward? So I'm very pleased to turn over the agenda to our partner on compensation, Diana Nealman and Mary Rizzuti. They're principals with Compensation Resources, who does a great job with our members, and they're going to give us some kind of things to think about and what to kind of be focused on going forward. Diana, Mary.
Kevin, thanks for the introduction. Mary and I are pleased to be here today to talk to the group about what's going on in compensation. It's incredible to think about what life was like only a few months ago and what is transpiring now. So without further ado, we can get into our presentation. So just for those of you who don't know us, just a brief introduction about compensation resources. We are a consulting firm that serves clients throughout the US, and we do actually do some work internationally as well, providing various compensation consulting services. Those are processes that we provide to clients on a very customized basis. So each client is unique, each client has their own individual needs, and we work with that in order to come up with solutions that are going to be the best fit for their organizations. We provide services in various areas, and we'll go through some of that later on. We pride ourselves on our extensive research capabilities. The data that we provide to you needs to be empirical, and we take great strides in ensuring that we purchase appropriate published surveys, we look at the right resources, we conduct the right research in order to give you information that would help you make the right decisions around pay. And certainly during this time, those decisions become even more important from an operational and a continuity standpoint. We are a strategic partner with MEA. We've been working with MEA members since 2015, again, in various situations, and hoping today's information will provide some perspective for you and help you to kind of think about what plans you may want to make moving forward regarding your compensation programs. So
Sorry to interrupt real quick. Can you make your screen, your slides full screen, please?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Looks good.
So just as far as some perspective, and again, we're only talking a few months ago, pre-COVID, pre-shutdown, pre-stay-at-home orders. We had a very strong economy. The stock market was doing very well. Unemployment rate was very low. It was, I think, 3.8% in February. And job applicants were enjoying good opportunities in the competitive market for finding employment. Only a very short time, where are we now? Very high unemployment, even though we've had some improvements, small improvements in the unemployment rate in June, it's still hovering around 11%. Economically, the labor market has been disrupted, some industries more than others, and I think we all know that retail, brick and mortar retail, tourism, restaurants, those have all been severely impacted, and many of those are continuing to feel the effects of the stay-at-home orders. The recovery, unfortunately, the horizon is a bit unknown because we don't yet have a treatment or a vaccination for COVID. So we continue to stay the course, doing what we can to stay safe and healthy while continuing to operate our businesses in the most efficient manner that we can. What we're starting to see right now is there are some parallels to what happened back in started in 2008 with the Great Recession as far as the job market goes and compensation levels. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, just to provide some perspective and maybe help you to think about what that may mean for you in the current scheme.
So what we did was, in all of the confusion, I said, let me look back and see exactly what happened from 2007 to the recovery and see if we could find any trend. So we chose a few industries: finance, human resources, technology, and manufacturing. We looked at various levels, executives, management, professionals, and staff. And what we did was we plotted the compensation of, I would say, about 25 positions at different levels within organizations to see what the growth or not was over this 10-year period. So you'll see base salary certainly was stagnant to an extent. The gray area is the variable comp. So that's where we saw the greatest impact. And when you look at 2018, 2017, we see the recovery on that variable comp side. So the conclusion is variable comp is linked to performance metrics, many of them quantitative. And the expectation is that companies began to recover and this was reflected in the bonus programs. So there was a slow movement with respect to base pay. There was an increased focus on variable pay and a fixed cost management. So having this as my framework, we started to then work through what was happening now. So we started working with our clients and then quantifying what their needs were. So on the next slide, we'll talk about what was to come.
So in addition to the research that Mary just mentioned, we also did a survey of our contacts to kind of get their temperature as far as COVID related impacts around compensation were. The survey was conducted in late May, early June, and we had participants provide data anonymously in order to give them some degree of confidentiality. So what we found at the time, and again, what we're seeing is this situation is continuing to be fluid, but at the time, the majority of the companies were continuing to look at compensation as it had been planned. If there were changes made, if there were any pay freezes or pay adjustments, many participants responded that those changes were going to be temporary. So that certainly was some positive thought around recovering, hopefully in the near term. 60% were not making changes as far as the merit increase process goes, but again, there was the other 40% that were. So those numbers are still important for us to consider. Again, at the time, the head count was remaining stable among the group that we surveyed.
And Diana, when was this survey circulated?
In late May, early June.
Okay.
So even though among the participants, the head count was remaining stable for them, and that could be part of the PPP loans as well, we are seeing in the general marketplace that there are continuing to be job losses, that some of those job losses are permanent, so they're not going to be added back in once the recovery occurs. We also surveyed this group regarding their college recruiting processes. It's a survey that we run regularly, and we were hoping to get some feedback on that. So about a third said they were still continuing with their processes, that they weren't going to change salaries upon hiring, and that they weren't planning to rescind offers. But however, what we're starting to see now is that some of that dynamic is shifting, that college graduates are not being very successful in finding employment post-graduation, that some of those offers that they were looking forward to have been rescinded. So again, we're looking at continuous changes in the marketplace that we need to become aware of.
So what we're seeing now are that companies are revisiting the total rewards philosophy. So where there were maybe 3 components, where there was a long-term incentive, so base salary, annual incentive, and a long-term incentive, some of the long-term incentive plans are being put on hold. The reason being that companies are finding it extremely difficult and challenging to set metrics for the future. So we've seen that. We've seen the bonus programs also either being put on hold, and we'll go into this a little bit more in a couple of slides from now, but the bonus plans are being assessed. So we're assessing them based on what the projected performance had been pre-COVID and what they're expecting now. And again, that what they're expecting now is what's so fluid. Staff levels are being looked at mostly from a lean perspective. So organizations are cutting back on certain positions. And on the first go round of reductions, the discussion was really around, do we even need this position? So I think in all of the success and the tight labor market, a lot of organizations stacked up their benches with human capital. And now they're relooking at this and thinking, I can probably do a little bit more with a little bit less and conserve some cash, both on the fixed cost, base salary, and the bonus on the performance piece. So we're providing some foundation around the data we collected historically to try to help forecast when the recovery will happen, how the organization from a total rewards philosophy should behave around this fluidity, and what the messaging is. So the communication is extremely important, both from top down and bottom up. So a lot of organizations are also opening up more of a cohesive and collaborative environment around the total rewards philosophy. So that's something that's different. That's something that's new. So total rewards philosophy used to be crafted senior leadership. Companies are now asking for input. What's important to you? So again, that's been a pretty impactful change, and it also serves as a very strong guidepost to developing new compensation packages. Diana, did you want to cover the salary structure?
Sorry, I was on mute. I apologize. So again, to Mary's point around philosophy, organizations over the past few years that we've been working with have been targeting tools to help them professionalize their compensation programs. One of those tools would be a salary structure to help them manage their compensation around base salary. So at this juncture, after revisiting the philosophy, it's also a good idea to look at your salary structures. Are they up to date? Are they helping you to manage your compensation? Can you still use those to evaluate your salaries? If you are planning merit increases, this is a great overlay to that process. You can also use your salary structures and what we're calling a position matrix to assess internal relationships to pay and equity within the salary ranges. So again, the concern on pay equity has not gone away because of COVID. It may have slowed down a bit, but it's certainly important for organizations to continue to look at not only what employees are being paid, but at what point and against one another. So the position matrix is a way to lay out positions in your organization hierarchically and functionally. And the position matrix, along with the salary structure, are great tools to enable you to assess, again, to Mary's point, are there any redundancies? Are there ways to streamline processes, to streamline functions in order to help you through this period of recovery and to help manage at least the fixed costs around base salary. So again, as a follow-on to the philosophy and the salary structure review is that workforce assessment. So using that position matrix will help you to look at your positions across the organizations. Questions you should ask: do you have the right talent in place? Are you leveraging the talent you have to be able to help you as an organization move through the recovery? Do you need to add some transformational leaders to your organization? Again, those who have experience to pull the company through. Again, streamlining is an important aspect of this period right now during COVID. But we also have to remember that retention is a key consideration. For those organizations who've been able to groom their high performers and provide rewards that provide a win-win for both the company and the employee, keeping those people on staff is still a key consideration. So those are the people that are going to help contribute to pulling through this difficult period. We're still seeing some competitive hiring as well. Organizations that do a lot of online and internet sales, they need warehouse people. Engineering and technology is still a hot market for job applicants. So we need to be aware of those. And especially if you're functioning in those areas, looking at the structure, the workforce, the philosophy are going to continue to be important for you.
Mary, I think you're
Mary,
muted.
Okay. So on the bonus side of this structure, first and foremost, some organizations are just choosing to freeze their bonus plans and make the announcement that there will not be bonus paid out this year. For those that are struggling to keep the bonus plan, we've seen a few interesting changes. So one of the recommendations we had made was to bifurcate the performance period into 2 tranches. So we said you can look at January to June and then have a new period, June to December, and adjust your metrics. When we say adjust metrics, they could be qualitative and quantitative. For the quantitative ones, again, the forecasting of those metrics is a little more challenging, but we're seeing some organizations replacing the quantitative metrics with more qualitative metrics. The quantitative metrics that we see most often now are increasing volume, increasing revenue, increasing profitability, and most importantly, efficiencies. So everyone is trying to do more with less, and these for a short period of time. So if we're looking at June to December, it should be pretty easy to have relational metrics on volume, revenue, profitability, and efficiencies are a little bit more qualitative. But instead of coming out with a mandated number, we're also recommending doing relational percentages. So can we grow volume by X%, revenue the same way, profitability the same way? So we see that movement, and it seems a little bit easier to layer that into existing bonus programs. Again, some are freezing current plans, but then moving to a discretionary award model. So that would be more behavior-based. Just generally, the company was able to remain viable. We've pivoted within this challenging environment, so there will be some awards from a bonus perspective. Other organizations are looking at impact pivotal leaders and providing bonuses there. Before making any changes, we suggest that you review your bonus plan language to ensure that it allows for changes. Generally, changes prospectively on a go-forward basis are allowed when we look at anything that may have been earned and accomplished from the period January to June. Again, looking at the plan language, many times that piece of the bonus would need to be paid, and then on a go-forward basis through the end of the year, adjustments can be made. So again, look at your plan language and ensure that the changes that you're looking to make align with what the plan allows. On the commission side, this also has been interesting. In the first portion of the COVID pause, some companies provided income protection for individuals that were 100% commissioned. This was a strong leap of faith, but with the loans that were provided, a lot of organizations were using that as income protection for their sales force. What's happening now is that there's this cautious forecasting of financials for the remainder of the year. Now, we can talk about performance and how someone is commissioned and think that those commission plans may still work. The payouts are just going to be less because the productivity will be lower. But we also need to consider the impacting factors when calculating commissions. So for many organizations, the revenue is provided as the baseline for the commission calculation. But within those revenue numbers, many times there's a takedown for transportation costs, inventory. So if there's inventory that's been sitting in a warehouse, the commission rate for that inventory is lower. Also, not being able to fulfill orders because the supply chain is experiencing a lot of challenges, and then the time to fill orders. So if your plan, your sales plan, includes these factors in calculating what the commission is and what that baseline number is, there may be some reconsideration on this as well. This is the most challenging piece of it because, again, some orders that may have been taken pre-COVID, if you're booking commission based on revenue received, a lot of those payments have been paused and delayed. So we see the biggest challenge on the commission plans. We've been working very closely, almost on a monthly basis with many clients to try to give advice as to how to calculate and adjust for what the commission plans were set out to pay. We're also working already on the 2021 plans to make sure that there's a vision on the strategy and the expected company performance. And we feel that while we're correcting for 2020, the 2021 plans need to really be part of the discussion today. With, again, something that's fluid, we're looking at grids. We're doing a lot of grids that overlay revenue profit margin in order to be able to have some flexibility in how these grids are going to deliver commission to the sales force.
Just want to end today's portion of the presentation around communication. So with all the changes, with all the relooks, reevaluations, relooking at your philosophies, it's important that there is clear communication to impacted employees and it's done in a timely manner. So that really is messaging that is the responsibility of senior leadership to make sure that they continue to engage employees and continue to build that trust and reinforce that trust among the team. So that's not only going to speak positively for the organization, but it's also going to help with motivating the team to continue to perform and hopefully to continue to retain them. So again, being proactive will help to continue to move you forward and to position you hopefully positively as we continue through the COVID pandemic.
And anyone who's interested in learning a little bit more about the look back that I did, I have a good deal of detail on the look back and the recovery between 2007, 2018, 2019. So I invite you to send me an email if you'd like a little bit more information, or I'm happy to schedule a call with you to talk through exactly what I saw for particular industries, particular levels of employees and individuals. We have a question here about salary range movement that you're moving. Somebody asked about a 2% year-over-year average market movement. We are seeing individuals, companies moving their salary structures. 2% sounds about right. I've seen also 1.5. We'll be publishing what the salary structure movement is so that you can all keep your structures up to date.
That's great. Really informative. I did one question for you all before we jumped out. You mentioned that unlike 08-09, there's more collaboration with the workforce going on from the total rewards. I'm curious, since we're also seeing a big demographic, seeing different factors be important now than they were 10 years ago?
Yes. So, I mean, there's this great appreciation for the workforce. The factors on, and Kevin, are you suggesting factors on performance?
Just what's important. Like, I think you were saying, like, how do you make compensation relevant and what's important to employees now, just in terms of,
yes,
even thinking beyond comp to benefits and everything else, like younger people versus, how's that playing out?
Yeah, so it's definitely flexibility. People are needing much more flexibility now. So there is no longer the 9 to 5. There are many individuals who start to work maybe at 5 o'clock in the evening. So there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of professional development. So for individuals who are struggling with this work from home environment, organizations are taking the time to put into place a lot of professional development for individuals so that they can be productive and have a greater impact on the organization.
Great. Looks like we might have had one more question come in. We'll see if we have time for one more here. Someone said when it be posted. Yeah, Jackie, we will, as soon as we do the recording, we'll email the presentation and the slides out to all participants. All right, well, Mary and Diana, thank you. That was wonderful. Sure, it raises a lot of questions for people. And like I said, for MEA members, feel free to reach out to us and we can connect you with Mary and Diana to talk more about your specific situation. So with that, let me turn it over to Amy.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Diana and Mary. That was great. So I'm just going to flip through here and get to where my legal update starts. So you guys have heard me say this now for the last couple of weeks, that even though we are in green now in all of Pennsylvania, green does not mean go. And that was illustrated even more last week when suddenly Governor Wolf issued another order pulling back a little bit on our green guidelines. But for right now, this is where we're supposed to be. Telework is being encouraged as much as possible. It's a little bit tough to interpret exactly where Governor Wolf went with the telework last week. Some people are interpreting to mean we should pull back. Any reopening plans we have, we should kind of put the brakes on. Other people are interpreting that a little bit more loosely, say sort of keep where we're going, keep us teleworking as much as we can, but go into the office as we need to. And we have all those safety orders that we need to continue to comply with. And of course, everybody's favorite topic, masks. But this was the big change for businesses last week was how many people we can have in a gathering. Okay, you still can have up to 250 people outdoors, but originally green was supposed to mean 250 people indoors as long as you could socially distance. But Governor Wolf knocked that down to 25 last week. So it is a big difference if you're trying to do, for example, trying to do group training at MEA. Now, we never get bigger than 25, or we won't get bigger than 25 anytime in the immediate future. But it has thrown a wrench into some people's plans, I think. And that's one of the difficulties of what we're doing here is that everything changes very quickly. But as far as masks go, they're still there, they're still required. Outdoors and if social distancing is not possible, we're now still required to wear masks. So this would be considered a universal masking order, and a lot of states have adopted this. Indoors, members of the public generally are permitted, public transportation, either waiting for or on, but also for the working environment. If you're working with the public, wear a mask. Food preparation or packaging, wear the mask. Walking through common areas in your building, wear the mask. And when you're interacting with others where social distancing is not possible. So again, you're sitting by yourself in an office with a door, do not have to wear your mask. Keep it handy though, because if somebody comes to the door, wants to have a conversation, if you have to get up and walk around, yes, you need to put your mask on. Any exceptions to the mask and face coverings? Obviously safety. And we've talked about this before with regards to reasonable accommodation. If you've got a situation where someone has a medical condition, the two that I tend to point to are asthma and anxiety, and people have trouble breathing with the masks on, you can have an interactive process discussion, which includes or can include the exchange of medical information from the employee. The problem is that it's probably not a reasonable accommodation to have the employee not wear a mask unless you can put them somewhere in the building where they are completely isolated. But it is just like any other reasonable accommodation, Americans with Disabilities Act discussion. If you have not done that before, reach out to an employment attorney, MEA members, call hotline, and we can help you through that. Case-by-case basis, every situation is going to be different. But there are also are safety considerations, more general safety considerations. Think about the weather that we've had outside for the last week and that we are going to have for the near future. If you have employees who are working outside, it may not be safe for them to be in a mask if they're performing heavy labor. There are other OSHA considerations involved here, and we've talked about this in our PSO training. It may be that you have to come up with an alternative. It may be that you need to do something else. And you certainly need to be making sure that if your employees are outside in this weather, masks or no masks, that they have breaks, that they have water, that all other OSHA safety guidance is at play. Under 2 years of age don't need to wear the mask or face covering. And also, if you have an individual who can't remove the face covering without assistance, that might be slightly older children, or that might be people with physical disabilities. And there are exceptions for the hearing impaired because many people who are hearing impaired communicate through lip reading, So there are some options around that. I actually have seen, and you probably have seen, the masks that are clear to assist the hearing impaired. One other new thing that came out in the last couple of days, CDC has updated its guidance for discontinuing isolation with people who have COVID-19. This is non-healthcare settings. Those of you in healthcare, you've got all sorts of special rules, right? But there are two strategies. There's a symptom-based strategy and a testing-based strategy. So if based on the symptoms, if you have a person with COVID-19, you've been isolating at home, these are the conditions under which you can end home isolation. So first, at least 10 days have passed since the symptoms first appeared, and at least 24 hours have passed since the last fever, and that's without use of aspirin, Tylenol, Advil, and symptoms have improved. That last one's a little bit subjective, but the idea being that your symptoms are getting better. There also is a testing-based strategy. This one is tougher though. I don't know if anybody out there has gotten tested or has tried to get tested. Testing is not that easy to come by, at least not in Montgomery County where I am. So it might be easier where you are. And even if it is easy to come by, results are not easy to come by. So you may get tested and you may not be able to get your results for a week, and those results become pretty much meaningless. But there is a test-based strategy, and that's you can end isolation for people who have tested positive if you've got resolution of fever, again, without the use of fever-reducing medications, and that improvement in symptoms, and this is where the testing piece comes in, you've got negative results from at least 2 consecutive tests that are collected 24 hours apart. So again, that one is tough because testing is not that easy to procure right now, and results are not easy to procure. So you really probably are more likely to go back to the symptom-based strategy. Okay, and then another question or series of questions that we've gotten in the last couple of weeks, since various states have instituted their quarantines. As you probably know by now, Pennsylvania and New Jersey have issued guidance regarding quarantines for travelers coming from hotspots, okay? And that can be Pennsylvania or New Jersey residents who go to a hotspot and come back, or you have someone visiting from a hotspot, somebody conducting business from a hotspot. And the idea is that the person is supposed to isolate at home for 14 days. These are not orders, at least not in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. They are guidances, and I'll talk about the significance of that or the potential significance of that in a minute. Is it the employer's responsibility to monitor? I would say yes. We as employers have a responsibility to provide a safe workplace to our employees, and that includes trying to monitor as best we can for COVID. So if you haven't done it already, think about some sort of a plan or some sort of a policy, some sort of a communication to your employees where you explain to them what the hotspots are, and keep in mind the hotspots are changing. You explain to them what the hotspots are, you want them to report to you where they might be traveling and when they've come back from traveling. And let them know that they might be required to quarantine. And that's relatively easy, right? If employees are able to work from home, a little bit more complicated if they're not. And we had this question, that's why I put it in here from a member. You know, what if somebody's just going and renting a cabin in the woods in North Carolina versus if they're going someplace else? They could be even going to a state that's not a hot spot, but they could be out in bars and restaurants, and arguably that's a much less safe activity. I don't know that as employers we want to get into a qualitative discussion around this. I think it's very easy to follow rules that have been set by the state. It's much harder to take these on a case-by-case basis and sort of piece out, oh, well, that travel is okay, this travel is not. And the concern always from the employment lawyer's point of view is that you are going to differentiate between a male and a female employee, between a younger and an older employee. You're going to get yourself in a discrimination situation. So I would not try as the employer to assess the employee's relative risk. If they are traveling to a place that is on the quarantine list, I would highly suggest that you have in place your own written policies and practices that the employee is going to have to quarantine when they come back. We've had the question, does the sick leave provision of the FFCRA apply? I have not seen anything definitive on this, but I think the answer is no. Under FFCRA, those 10 days of paid sick time go to an employee who is quarantining under a state, federal, or local order. These are not orders, at least not in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So right now, we don't think the sick leave provisions apply. Keep in mind, however, if you as the employer say, you know what, I want to pay the employee for the time that they're home, even if they can't work, because I want to encourage people to do the right thing, right? Keep in mind that the worst thing that's going to happen there is that you're not going to get the FFCRA tax credit. That's the potential issue. So if there is no FFCRA, do you have to pay them while quarantining? It would be a nice thing to do, certainly if you can, again, because you want to encourage proper behavior. One of the things I want you to think about too, if you do institute a written policy, part of that policy should be that your employees have to be honest with you about their travel plans and about where they're going. And if they're not, somebody picks it up on Facebook or Instagram and they see that someone is in a prohibited place, what are you going to do under that circumstance? Warn people that lying about their travel could be the basis for disciplinary action. So do you have to pay them while quarantining? No, but again, I think it encourages the behavior that you want. Keep in mind, if you're not going to pay employees and they're not working, they don't have the ability to work from home, there may be an exempt versus non-exempt issue. Your exempt employees have to be paid for any week in which they perform work. Your non-exempt employees only have to be paid if they're actually working, so there might be a difference there. Might unemployment compensation apply? Yes, it might. And I have probably said it 100 times on these webinars, I'm not an unemployment compensation expert, but we do have a great partner who is Judy Snyder of Corporate Cost Control, and she has opined that she thinks that unemployment compensation would apply at least in Pennsylvania. So something you might want to do in that situation is encourage your employees to apply for unemployment. Keep in mind, we can't promise the employees that they'll get it. We can just promise them that we'll provide truthful information to the government to support their application. All right, so do we have any questions come in, Kevin?
We always have questions for you, Amy. So let me go through because you're so popular. So the first question, I think it relates to taking a mask off in the office. Can your door be closed or open if you're in your private space? I
mean, I haven't seen anything definitive on that. I think you're okay having your door open, but just have the mask at the ready, because as soon as somebody comes to your door, especially if your door is less than 6 feet from the hallway, or your door in the hallway is less than 6 feet from you, just have your mask ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a few other mask questions as there always are. I mean, I think the thing to bear in mind, the general rule here is if you're going to be someplace where other people are going to be, you're walking through an area, you wear a mask. If you're going to be in a place where there's not others, but they're going to come in contact with you, you put the mask on, because again, you're trying to protect others. I mean, I think if you just follow those guidance, it would kind of all make sense. Somebody raised a question, and I might have missed it when you were talking about frontline workers and then getting additional pay. Do you know anything about that? I'm not sure what to get.
I don't know exactly what they're talking about, except that I know some companies have given shift differentials or incentive pay or hazard pay, whatever you want to call it, to employees. I remember reading about Target. It's not a law, no. At least not one that I'm aware of.
Yeah. Somebody asked if there's updates on the PPP loan. There's a lot of discussion out there right now. And again, over the last couple of weeks, we haven't had more sessions on this because everything's been pretty stable. There's some talk about there being, approval of the small loans. The number I've been hearing is 150. There's, they're also pushing people because there's so many available under the current. And then there's a lot of discussion in Congress right now in terms of what's the next stimulus going to look like. But, I'd say the last 3 weeks, there's been nothing new to report. And if there is, we will always jump that back into the discussion. Someone asked about testing, the 2 tests, to avoid the quarantine, the 24-hour apart. So could it be 3 days apart for test? I guess what you're saying is the actual drawing of the test has to be at least 24 hours apart. You don't have to wait for the first result to get your second test. Is that correct?
Correct.
I think you talked about, someone said, can they offer partial compensation as a compromise for quarantine? I'm assuming unless it's that exempt, non-exempt issue.
Yeah, a little bit different. There is an exempt, non-exempt potential issue, but yeah, you can figure out a way to be creative around this, I think. And if you have questions, again, if you're a member, let us know at hotline and we'll help you. If you're not a member, reach out to your employment attorney.
Okay, so somebody just said something that says Governor Wolf just announced that COVID-19 PA hazard pay grant. So we'll have to look that up, and I'm sure we'll send something out to everybody. Thank you, Mindy, for sending that along. We have not been tracking since we've been on.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. We'll take a look at that.
Someone asked the question, do you see any information on extending FFCRA leave for people who've already used 12 weeks now with the potential schools not opening? I have not heard that.
Yeah, this is going to be a huge issue, though. A lot of people have burned through their 12 weeks of FFCRA. We have schools that are, not opening or maybe opening on a hybrid basis in the fall, and people with school-age children are not going to be able to go to work if that's the case. So I've heard rumblings of maybe doing something with FFCRA, but I've not heard anything definitive around that.
Okay, and I think that's all we have for today, but I'm sure we'll have more for next week. So I think, is there one more slide here? So again, just remind members that there's a lot of resources available in addition to the hotline and legal line. We have in our member tools a variety of handbook policies, COVID policies. They're also for the general public. We have our resource center, which is meainfo.org/coronavirus. Members, we do have the safety plan available along with the PSO. And then we also are pleased to remind members that we've developed recently an executive liaison program. As you've heard, I think over the last couple of weeks, there's lots and lots of issues coming up. So our leadership team is, we've assigned somebody to every member, are happy to meet to discuss your questions and share what we're hearing with the other 600 members we work with, because again, our goal is to help you grow and be successful. And so, it's just another layer of support. So if you're not sure who your consultant is, or you'd like to schedule something, you can reach out to any one of us or to Farhan Malik at meainfo.org below. So with that, I think we're done. Want to thank everybody for joining us again today, and look forward to speaking with you next week.